Hey everyone, thank you for joining, and special thank you, Jessica Andrews, joining us from Copper here today from Toronto. We were just talking about that. We will get started here in just a minute. I'm gonna put a poll here in the chat. I hope you all can see this, but really excited here to talk not just CRMs and Copper and Jessica's experience and everything she's seen in the marketplace, but also how our tools, how our people can work together to create better process, better systems, better outcomes. So really, reducing, if you kind of read some of the content that we're writing here leading up to this, reduce the stress in the way that how do we get the bumps out of the systems and all that, make sure that they're integrated well, that people are informed, that are not siloed, and yet hopefully like good stress around like building, right? Like that we've got the right revenue coming in, we've got the right deals, that we're coordinating that. Growing can be difficult for sure. And I've been with agencies that's difficult but it's difficult in a good way, right? Like you're building towards something. And I'm hoping that we can share our experiences and pick Jessica's mind on that, on what she's seen as well. So we got a couple people responding here, some twos to that poll that define and overpromise, so like also define and overreact. Jessica, while we're waiting for people to join, like, what's your take? Where are you seeing in the polls?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that there is definitely some friction out there when it comes to newer agencies that are just kind of getting their feet wet with the whole process in general. And that's where it kind of starts at number one. And then there's some superstars who have rainbows and perfect briefs. But I think almost every agency at some point has been in the 1-2 section, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's funny because, or maybe not funny. I joined there's an organization, there are about 800 people, distributed team, put on this big webinar. The first hour was what is a creative brief and how do we hand it off appropriately, right? And it's like,
Wow.
yeah, they're still struggling with it. They're still iterating on it. They're still making sure they're doing the best job possible. And I thought it's like, okay, well, it's one of those things where it's a journey, right? Not a destination.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Jessica, as we get started here, give us, a little bit about Copper and your role, and then we'll kind of dive into our conversation points here.
Absolutely. So, hi, I'm Jessica. I am the VP of Marketing at Copper CRM. And for those of you who don't know what Copper is, we are a CRM that is specifically built for agencies that use Google Workspace. So you have both the CRM, the client management side, and, as well as project management tools as well. So you can keep your entire client journey in one place. And really excited to be here with Parallax because we also integrate with Parallax. So the idea that Copper and Parallax together create this kind of synergy is super amazing. So yeah, happy to be here. In terms of myself, I've been working with agencies since the beginning. I've sold to agencies in my ad tech days. I sold to PR agencies when I was at Cision, and now at Copper, we're selling to agencies once again. So I've seen both the sales side and the marketing side where I'm understanding what some agencies are going through when it comes to sales friction. So I'm excited to dive into this topic today.
Well, really appreciate you being here. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Grant Hultgren. I'm Vice President of Customer Success. Uh, I love having someone like Jessica here because the sales side was always like the magic side, the like art side, right? Like, don't look behind the curtain because I'm ops. I love data. I want repetitive structure. I want process. I want known expectations. And guess what? Sales isn't always that. So that was a part of my career that I was like, I'm not a salesperson. And I'm excited to have Jessica here because from my own journey and the ops side being a COO and a CFO in different roles of different organizations and agencies, it was when I got involved in the sales side that I really started to see not just my own career accelerate, but like a better understanding of where I can positively impact my team that I wanted to be set up for success, right? All those delivery folks, as well as like these close bonds with salespeople that I could help and that they didn't always know the answer to things and that I could actually help shape a deal to be better and to provide more value. So, really fun topic here today as we dive in. All right, why does this matter, Jessica? Like from executives maybe to those delivery folks, like give us that kind of high level that of approach here and why we're all sitting here today.
Yeah, for sure. So I can definitely speak to the sales side before someone actually becomes a client. Ultimately, sales just want things to move quickly, right? They want momentum on their side. If someone has come to an agency to ask for a specific service, they likely have an immediate need that they need to resolve for. Sometimes it's a little bit extended, but they really do need momentum and fast wins. And so when there's misalignment from the ops team where they're kind of coming in and saying, you can't sell that or you can't do that, they feel oh, they're slowing me down. They don't believe that, but they also do believe it in a way. So, what's really interesting about sales is that if you can enable them to be as fast as possible, then everyone wins. It's just how can we do it in a way where you're not going to run into trouble down the line? I mean, that's from my sales perspective, but I'm interested in hearing from your perspective. Why is this important for ops?
Yeah. I kind of alluded to it, right? If you can get upstream a little bit further to help shape that deal, guess what? You shouldn't be saying we shouldn't be selling this, right? Own of that voice on a customer or a prospect to say, you know what, we do this really well, and here's why, right? And not only here's why, but there's three other companies I've already for, and here's the outcome. Wouldn't it be really cool if we could do the same for you? I really do think it's that sort of mind shift set of, for me, it's like, it's not sales, it's just problem solving. And that was like a big leap for me. But now, what? Help shape the deal, have repeatable processes that can accommodate that coming in, right? We know there's a familiarity. Of course, every deal, I hear this all the time, it's a snowflake. There's truth to that. We should absolutely be presenting our solutions as a snowflake to those prospects, right? To generate the value and make sure that we generate as much revenue as possible. But the process, the operations behind that does not have to be a snowflake. And so even from a parallax standpoint, we go and contextualize all this. We call them service offerings, which are these patterns that we can go and apply to these deals coming in to give us not 100% accuracy of what's going to happen, but maybe 50 to 80%. And all of a sudden, you start seeing those patterns and it starts becoming familiar, and that fear of slowing you down or that fear of the unknown starts to go away, and that confidence starts to rise, and you see way better delivery outcomes.
Yep, love that.
Yeah. All right. So from your experience, where does this all start? Like, where does the problems start, Jessica?
I think I see it as fragmented tools, little fiefdoms of tools. And so, what we see all the time from agencies that come in to start using Copper is that the sales team is using some kind of smaller CRM or a spreadsheet potentially, and only sales and leadership are really using that spreadsheet or CRM. Whereas the operations side, they're definitely using a lot of project management tools, maybe even a spreadsheet, but it's pretty rare. Project management tends to win. And there's this idea that everything can live in a CRM, and then you create a handoff doc that goes to the project management tool. And this is where things I think fall apart, is when there's not in-depth visibility between the two teams. You can create automations that go back and forth to share a lot of this data, but there's still always going to be an email or potentially a brief or document that's not going to make it over into project management. And so that's why at Copper we built it so that you could use project management and CRM in one. There's also project management tools who support CRM use cases where you can have everyone in the same place. And then there's tools like Parallax, obviously, that connect all of them together as much as it possibly can from a
Yep.
resource perspective. But ultimately, when you silo people and tools, you're siloing people in reality too.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think the CRM and project delivery, that PM side that you're getting at with Copper is really special
Hmm.
in that, from my standpoint, I've been part of agencies. I was the second hire of one, I was like 15 at another. And guess what? Like to get to that growth, like you've got to have a pipeline, right? Generating
Hmm.
revenue. It could be a spreadsheet early days, right? But eventually you get to the point where you need a CRM. But you also have to be doing project delivery, right? Like,
Hmm.
are we doing what we said we would do in a profitable manner, or at least profitable enough that we can continue to grow and scale as expected? Parallax, our standpoint is, you reach that 15% point, and guess what? Like, you can't like use your fingers all of a sudden to be like, what's Grant working on? Like, how much capacity does he have? And you get to a point where it's like, how do we start forecasting all of this out? And from my standpoint, that's like a very critical nature of all this. It differs from the project delivery standpoint that you all are getting at, because
Hmm.
what I'm trying to do is forecast out what roles I need, what without ever compromising that project delivery. And yet at the same time, that sales handoff to delivery is so critical. Those details are so important. And so when we think about this and saying like, what are those hesitations from Parallax standpoint, we like that's what we try to combat is, do I have people to be able to do this work? Do I have the right
Hmm.
skill sets to do this work? Yeah, I might know what all the tasks are, but where's that creative director at? Where's that head of engineering that really needs to build out the architecture? And do I have that? And that's where you can often get delays in, especially kicking off a project. Grant took his summer vacation again, right? He's out for 2 weeks. I wish I had known that because I could have lined something. And it is the culmination of all those kind of factors that come into play that can, any one of them can slow down a project being kicked off. It's tough juggling. There's a lot of plates for sure. But yes, to your point, it's knowing the right automations. And then we often talk about the people in the process. So who's doing what when with the right expectations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, CRM is really great for what's the project coming down the line, what's the amount of money, like getting all of that detail in order. And then, yeah, the people, that doesn't really slot into a CRM system, but it's a huge part about how agencies function. And so you have to think about your people as well as your process.
Yep. All right. So yeah, and again, I just echo what Caitlin said. If there's questions, feel free to drop them in. We'll have some time at the end. But if there's anything that's resonating with you all, or you're saying, can you go a little bit deeper on this process, or here's what we're seeing, please share it. I'm happy to answer those kind of ad hoc as we go. All right. When we look at sales and operation collaboration, what do you expect to see? Like, what does good look like in that, Jessica? And how should we expect them to like work together to make an agency work?
Yeah, I think there's this expectation that from operations that sales should be able to give as many details as possible and give like the most detailed amount of information very early in the process.
Of course they
And
should.
of course they should. Yeah, it just makes perfect sense. But I think what's interesting is that it's easier to get what you want when you don't have to get sales to do the manual detailed work. And so that's why I say automate everything at your agency to the point where it's just crazy how many automations there are. And so I'm kind of thinking like what we're working on at Copper right now is creating a use case where you start in like an initial conversation pipeline. And when you move that op to the next stage, which is kind of gathering information to give to the delivery team, you would be able to send an email from just moving that op, and it would include a form that the client would fill out with all the detailed information, and that would then fill in the opportunity fields themselves. And then you could go into a tool like Parallax to say, okay, here's the requirements. Let's make sure that the margins are right. Let's make sure that people are booked onto this accurately. And so when you kind of expect your salesperson to do that, there's always going to be delays just because a seller could be on a call and suddenly it's more than 24 hours before that email gets sent out, or they went through the requirements on a call and they have to manually fill out everything in the CRM. And so taking away as many of those pieces as possible from just bogging down the sales process is key. We're starting to see a lot of AI tools as well that are able to do this, and something we're looking at as well. But the more AI comes in, the better, just because you won't have to do all this kind of manual stuff. And so, yeah, just like don't bog down the sales team with manual work that's not necessary, and you'll both get what you're looking for.
Yeah, and if I'm representing ops, right, and to your point, we're trying to reduce the amount of manual entry or manual effort that a salesperson would be putting into a transition point or an update on a deal. And if I'm representing ops appropriately, I'd say, yeah, but we need those details, right? And how do we go and what are the most critical pieces? I think any person that is in project management that's maybe leading up a department that wants to excel, that's what's gotten them there, right? They want those details.
Hmm.
There's no doubt that you should be advocating for your team if you're not getting those. However, what I'd say are most important, and you hit it, right? Most critical factors are how much are we charging for this? How much is it going to cost, right? Do I understand what it's going to take to deliver this project? And do I have the appropriate skills and resources to deliver in the timeline expected? Yes, we need to definitely get the project management tasks all built out. Yes, we need to understand the briefs coming in. But those high levels, if we start getting those, honestly, I think you're probably hitting the like most critical criteria. And what salesperson doesn't want to make sure that you're on budget, that you're generating the rent, right? Like they're incentivized on that. And so it is really figuring out what those mutual kind of beneficial points are, honing and aligning there, and then building from there, because it can get very granular, but the reality is too, we need our salespeople out there selling. They're not there writing scopes of work all day every day, right? Like their job is to go and generate that revenue, and they're also probably banking, and this is even my current role today, right, on us helping to make sure that any gaps that are there, we either call them out early, and guess what, we can write a change order. That should absolutely be our job, or that we are negating those gaps through our previous experience. And so, I think it is a real balancing act, and just an almost like an act of empathy too, of understanding where those core accountabilities lie, and yet still building on a foundation of hopefully financial performance, making sure there's not overruns, and making sure that we're all aligned to those mutual benefits.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it just brought up another thing about just automation and staying in touch is it's not just at the very beginning where you gather as many details as you can so that it's smoother down the line. It's also that handoff, right? Is if ops and project managers are showing up earlier in the process, the handoff ends up being a lot better in the end. Like I remember one agency that I signed with that the sales rep really impressed me. He was honest through the whole process about exactly what was possible and how long it would take. And then I signed the deal and I had to wait 3 days before I emailed them and said, hey, like, when are we starting? It's supposed to be like, I don't know, October 2nd. Like, when are we starting? And then 3 days later, I had a project manager reach out and say, hi, I'm so and so. I'm taking over your account. Let's do our kickoff call. But imagine, and it kind of was like my high expectations dipping a little bit, being a little bit worried. They did completely come back and wow me, which is amazing. But you never want your client to be at that point. So if there was just an automatic way to say, deal signed, boom, introduce the project manager and set up time. You don't have to do these manual outreaches because when things fall through the cracks like that, it makes things a little awkward for the client. It makes them worry about their decision to choose you.
I mean, right, we're all human, and yet that first impression is so important. And there is the sales first impression, but then there's also the delivery first impression. I think
Yep.
that's what you're getting at, is those like really critical milestones. Now, you're probably a very kind and understanding person, right? Not everyone is like that is out there. And so it is really trying to reduce that risk and ensure that there is consistency in that handoff. And yeah, to me, again, being a COO, that was what I always looked at because that can really change the trajectory of a project. And even if it's 3 days before reaching out, well, then maybe calendars don't align, vacations, right? We have Labor Day and school starting, and guess what? Like people are kind of hesitant to schedule stuff right now. Like it starts to stack quickly, and all
Hmm.
of a sudden you can be losing 2 weeks in your delivery schedule due to just calendar conflicts at
100%.
that most important stage. So no, I think that's a really important insight there. All right, turning smooth delivery into growth, kind of that topic. Like, what are the indicators you look for in that process? Like, how do you know what, like what's going well, what's not in that growth phase?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, obviously, under budget, fast delivery, clear ROI, like all the things that everyone is preaching about being a successful agency, high
Hmm.
engagement, excitement, listening for that stuff. But one of the biggest things that I kind of remember about working with agencies is you can't always just go straight for the, hey, like upsell situation where you're like, let's just say that there's lower performance or maybe good performance, but not where you really want it to be, and you're a web development agency. And they're like, yeah, like people aren't really engaging with the site or we're getting less traffic and we don't know why. A lot of times, the first thing that an agency will do is say, hey, let's do some conversion rate optimization on your website and see if we can get those numbers from 1 to 2%. And that definitely works in the short term. But you have to think of yourself as an advisor to the agency that or to your client that you're working with because you don't want to just go straight in and sell that. You want to say, okay, like, why are you feeling this way? What are your customers saying? How are they feeling about your website? Is there anything that they've said is kind of bogging them down? Have you tried talking to people who have gone through your sales cycle? And oftentimes there's just like bigger conversations or bigger things that can be resolved, not necessarily by your agency or you specifically, but imagine if it's just the brand isn't resonating with someone and you kind of need a new redesign. That's where you can use your referrals in your back pocket to say, hey, branding agency, can you help this client? And then, of course, a web redesign comes in later, and that's usually a bigger budget. So it's like listening for the pain that your client is having and listening to them as a friend and a confidant as opposed to a salesperson is kind of how I always think about it is showing up human instead of showing up like a salesperson, which a lot of clients don't like.
Oftentimes in that upsell, and this is a conversation I have both in the communities that I'm a part of, and then also with some of our customers. But I'm curious, Jessica, to get your take because can be tricky. Like who does that land on, and what have you been seeing any distinguishment between like project management and account management on ownership around that, or would your recommendation be bring the salesperson back in to kind of help evaluate some of that?
It depends. It depends. It's really like if you have one person who's managing the whole sales process from end to end, whether that is before sales and after the sale and upsell, then yes, of course, that person would be there. But it's also the project manager themselves. Like sale, just because sales feels like foreign to you doesn't mean that you're not doing it all the time. I mean, people are mentioning products that they enjoy using or services. So you are friends with these guys. You want them to succeed as much as you want yourself to succeed. So anyone in the organization can be a salesperson. Just listen for the cues, and if you need backup to close a deal or convince a client, you can always lean on your sales resources. But I don't think of myself as a salesperson, but of course, I sell all the time as a
Yeah.
marketer, so it's the same thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting. The more mature organizations that I typically work with have, agencies will think of any title possible and they'll come up with unique titles. So if this doesn't match for maybe even what you're thinking out there, but it resonates, it's usually like an account manager, a program manager, right? Someone who is looking out high level for the delivery of projects, but also they may have a quota associated with growth of that portfolio. They might not. They might be really looking at margin delivery across the board on that. And how you approach it is, I think, to your point, kind of like it's up to you. You might be structured with a salesperson that's really engaged in the delivery process, running QBRs, whatever it may be. Yeah, go ahead, lean on them for those upsell opportunities. There can be really good results with that. More often than not, even having like, I mean, you kind of mentioned it, like, well, whether it's different products I'm using, maybe it's different processes in those cases, I don't, yes, it's selling, but it's just problem solving, right?
Yeah,
It's just saying like, hey, you know what? Here's what I would do. I would use this agency over here. They'd be a great fit for that. And to your point, it may lead to a larger project down the line, but you're, if nothing else, building trust and confidence in that current customer
yep,
anyway. And I would absolutely, I think from a growth standpoint with the project management teams and the account teams that I've overseen, told them that's where we need to lean in, right? When you can start looking at your portfolio, your active backlog, your existing customer relationships and saying, I think we'll get 30% growth out of them, that can really alleviate, whether it's market conditions, whether it's change, AI is disrupting everything right now, right?
mhm,
Causing a lot of hesitancy on the sales side that can really alleviate some of those pains. And then also create case studies that allow you to go to market with maybe new services or different ways of speaking so that the marketing
mhm.
team can take it up and say, oh, you're right, that message wasn't, really resonating, but this one is over here. That's the problem we should be solving. And I think that feedback loop is so critical. It doesn't happen in silos. It doesn't happen when sales teams and delivery teams aren't communicating effectively. And I think that's the biggest point there is just where is that feedback loop? Just because it gets into a project level doesn't mean selling is done. Delivery is really important, no doubt about that. My argument is never compromise delivery, but find those opportunities to grow that relationship. Oftentimes, the customer is almost waiting for you to ask that question anyway.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. It's the best agencies I've ever worked with as the client are the ones that weren't saying, well, this is going to cost extra. That's not how you go about it. It's identifying the issues and saying, hey, we've heard a lot of our clients say XYZ. Are you guys experiencing the same thing? And then start making recommendations. It's just I want them to understand me, to see me, and know that they have my best interest at heart. Those are the ones where an upsell happens naturally and it doesn't feel forced and feels more comfortable in general.
Well, not only that, and I mean, we haven't said it, but that takes a lot of trust, right? That
Mhm.
takes a human component and element, which is what a lot of salespeople are betting on themselves to do anyway. And so when you have that trust established in delivery, now you have that capability to, actually be opened up to about other problems or solutions that might be out there. And to me, that's just you'll know too. It's like when you're pushing it too far and when to back off. But I think that's just a really critical asset to any growing agency to lean into and try to build process and expectations. A racy, I love a good racy, you use there.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And that's why the tech matters so much is if you can automate the stuff that everyone hates doing, the sales team at least, maybe ops likes the repetitive overlapping work, but the more you can automate, the more time you have for the human connection.
Yeah, and for driving value and delivery, totally agree. I think even how you're talking about whether it's automation or some of the AI work out there,
Mhm.
to me, AI should be, I don't think AI is an effective seller. I was looking at it even in terms of like chatbot results, and guess what? Like people get super turned off when it tries to upsell because contextually it just doesn't fit. And so I think what's interesting even in that regard is use it then as administratively to benefit the administrative work of your team, right? Like no one wants to sit there and click all the boxes, right? Like all that, like actually, I probably know a few PMs that enjoy doing that, but like automate that, get client facing, drive value, and then make sure you have that feedback loop.
Yeah,
Um,
I love what you're saying about the chatbot. It's absolutely true. Our own support chatbot is there just to answer the question as fast as possible because no one wants to spend their time searching through a knowledge base for your question. If you can just get that instant answer, then it's amazing. And then we train the chatbot to look for questions where you're like, why are you asking that question? And that goes to our support team, it goes to our account managers, it goes to sales, where it's like if you're asking a question that is really a well, tell me about your problem. How can we solve it? Then those are what needs to be pushed forward. So yeah, it's so
yeah,
true.
that prompt for human intervention is really important to get right. Because you're right. Yeah, serve where you can, serve as quickly as possible on, those low-hanging fruit kind of pieces, but get to a human as quickly as possible on problems. I'm concerned, right?
Yeah.
Or there's an opportunity I'm wondering about. Like those are ones you don't want to miss along the way.
Yeah, exactly.
So like we're about halfway through. I don't see, I'll double check the Q&A here because I often don't look there. I'm not seeing too many questions. Post your questions in the chat if you've got any for Jessica or myself. If you're wondering about any of the tools, happy to dive in there. But Jessica, in summary, like what are the 4 or 5 things really that we should be taking away here? What can give us your take here on if I were to start doing this, or if I'm not doing this today, like I should start doing this today.
Yeah, so I would say definitely reduce or simplify your tech stack. That's number one. Take a look at all the tools you're using. Are you using the tools the way that they're supposed to be used? Are you just kind of plugging things together with duct tape and hoping for the best? Is there a way that you can make a better customer experience by just simplifying and reducing? The second is automate as much as possible that you can automate you want to reduce the burden on sales of filling out information because that's not how they work best. You want them to just be able to focus on connecting with people in live or over a webinar, whatever you need to do. You want to automate the handoff as well. So don't allow for any lag between the minute that deal is signed and when it's picked up by the project management team. And then finally, sales check-ins that have nothing to do with upselling, just constantly being there for your client to make sure that they see you and understand you and use your CRM to make sure that you're connecting with them on a regular basis as much as possible.
And there is a question that came in on the automation side. Where do you start? Like, if someone's using Copper, like, how do you help them automate or understand where those automations are? And then, sometimes with automations, it's building trust to understand that it is occurring. Like, where would you, recommend people start on that?
Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, what I would do is just take an audit of the emails that your team is sending. So if the salesperson is sending the exact same intro email to set up time, that can be easily automated. If they're sending the same email as a follow-up to that meeting, that can be automated. Just watching what they're doing every day and looking for the ones where there's very little difference between email to email for prospect to prospect. That's the first place to look. There is such a thing as over automation to the point where you're hoping to maybe have fields that will fill into emails so that you can like craft a semi-automatic email. Those don't work. So you want to make sure that you have the time to fill those ones out. And you also want to make sure that everything is integrated if it's an outside system so that you can just seamlessly flow through these situations and have everything need to be where it needs to be.
And is that typically like the head of sales that's doing that, or who's your or because not a lot of organizations you kind of reach a certain point where you have like directors of revenue or elements like that who should be responsible and looking out for that, and hopefully maybe iterating on some sort of basis to make sure that it's keeping up to date.
Yeah, definitely the head of sales because it's about operational efficiency for their team is trying to identify where these points are that it can be automated. With smaller agencies, it's sometimes the agency founder who
Yeah.
is doing business development by themselves and they want to know how to reduce the amount of work they have to do, or they want to have a system that's repeatable that someone underneath him can take over and they don't feel the need to, I don't know, feel like they're giving up something and they're just going to get less in return. It's about freeing up their time for more strategic kind of situations. And then so sometimes we have someone in ops who's just overseeing the whole thing. They're overseeing how sales works, they're overseeing how the delivery teams work, and so sometimes it's the operations manager that's doing that. At Copper, usually during onboarding, we have these documentations that's like where are the bottlenecks, how can we automate things, but just in general, it's really whoever is owning the CRM to keep an eye on the automations that could be created.
Cool. Another question came in. Do you have any tips to start shifting your sales team's mindset to work more closely with delivery when they might not have in the past? How would you encourage that shift?
Ooh, it's tricky because you kind of have to make sure that the sales team is willing to cooperate, and I feel like it's already a lost cause if there's little cooperation and a lot of friction. So you have to reset expectations and say, hey, this is a new way we're going to work together. Ultimately, I think it's just understanding from a client's perspective that knowing who's going to take over my account is extremely important to me as a client because I may fall in love with the salesperson, and in my head, I'm like, I cannot wait to work with this person. They understand me, and then they pass it to the delivery team, and that magic is lost. So it's knowing that the delivery team has to show up during the sales process. They can't just be kind of hiding behind the scenes waiting for the deal to come through. And for the seller, it's going to make the actual sale that much easier when they see the people that are going to be handling the account. Happened to me the very last moment before I decided to pull the trigger. I met the team members with our current agency, and I was like, "Yep, this is it, done. Let's just seal the deal." So if you can get that aha moment earlier in the sales journey, it'll just be easier for everyone.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that last point around whether sometimes there's a hesitancy is like, is the delivery team like sales facing, right? Can they be sales facing? And generally, in my experience, it's not for everyone, but there are certain people out there, like if you do discoveries, right? If you have a wedge offering that's more consultative, those are the folks you want to engage there because they're the ones that are also going to help shape that deal to set it up for proper expectations, align it to your value prop of your organization, and definitely would echo that. I would also say, though, having a good cadence. So even at Parallax here, I mentioned this before, the people process tool. Within that process, if you're not running through, especially at a leadership team level, those deals that are coming in with high probability, you should start doing that today. And that's not to say that the salesperson has to be accountable for closing the deal when they say it's going to close, right? There is variability and subjectivity to that, but it's understanding the effort of those deals coming in and how to guarantee as much as possible the delivery of those. Also, it was on me and my roles to take that, translate it, and prep my team as needed. Hey, we're bringing in this Fortune 500 or this mom and pop shop. And guess what? Sometimes the Fortune 500s ran more smoothly, right? They were used to the process, and the mom and pops that were lower budget ones were the ones that demanded everything. And so you know your team the best, you know where those pitfalls can lie. And it was, it is on that ops person, in my opinion, that head of delivery, that head of project management, to translate that in such a way that you can set your team up for those expectations. Also, like we're all busy, right? So that sort of heads up, like really removes some of the push and pull, right? That feeling that like I'm always context switching. I have to go to sales and then I have to go to my delivery and then I have a status meeting for the project management team, right? Like, and that sort of just hey, yeah, there's ebbs and flows to all this, right? And I'm here to try to make it as smooth as possible, but I don't control all the variables. I think those are really important narratives. You mentioned integrated systems. One of the things that we love about Copper is our integration with Parallax, and we think that, those two different data sets are really different. They're meant to be housed in those systems, and
Hmm.
yet there are some pieces of data that can really help inform. Now, I've mentioned margin, right? You might be looking at project costs. Roles, for example, might be an area, or even service offerings, which is really a Parallax component, but that we surface in Copper to help inform that sales process. Understanding those components are really important. Agencies, although are evolving rapidly here now with AI and there's a lot of change, they hadn't changed for 60 years, really. Like, it's the same metrics, right? It's what's my head count? How do I get the work done? Do I have enough revenue, right? What's my cash flow? Like all of those pieces really have always been there, and I anticipate they will. That said, though, understanding how the data integrates, where we should be pausing to say, hey, are we making sure we got this handoff right? Yes, kick off the documentation, but have that meeting to say, yep, this is complete. I don't have any questions for the sales team member. Or, you know what, I better call Jessica quick because I kind of have a question about this, and that could really change how I approach this project. That allows for a much cleaner handoff on the from the client basis as they go from sales to delivery to make sure it's as smooth and seamless as possible. And so I think those are really important pieces. Jessica, if people are looking for you, they're shy to ask a question here and now, but they want to reach out and learn more about Copper or more about your experience, where can they find you?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way. I post a lot of content about what we're hearing from agencies and consulting as we're talking to them every day. And we also you can check us out at copper.com. We have a lot of information about the Parallax integration as well. If you're considering Parallax, are a Parallax customer or looking for that information, oh, perfect. Look at that. It's in the chat. So it'll also be shared at the end of this call. So feel free to reach out about anything. And yeah, happy to chat about all things client management on the sales side and then project management too.
Yeah, and I would echo that. If you have questions operationally, you want to talk AM versus PM, any of the topics we covered on, I don't have all the answers, but I will try to steer you in the right direction. And you can reach me on LinkedIn. But Jessica, I really appreciate your time, your insights here today. For any of the Parallax customers that were able to join today, if you're curious about Copper and want to see that, we have demo environments, or we can get you in touch with their team. It's a really cool tool. Their values, I think that's probably the most special part, that democratization of
Mhm.
not just the data, but that process really aligns with our core values here at Parallax. And so there's a lot of synergies there that are really special. And yeah, if you want to learn more, feel free to reach out. But Jessica, thank you again so much for your time today. And it was really fun chatting with you.
Yeah, it was. Thanks so much for having me. This was fun.
If you want the recording, keep an eye out. Oh, that's in the chat too. But thanks again. I hope everybody has a great rest of their week.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.